starting to do a lot of my requests hot off the satellites. It was built with some particular people in a particular military out of another nation. I'm not gonna reveal which one here because you always got these agents that work for the government that try to entrap you and put you into a situation where you mess around and get charged thousands of dollars every day for some stuff that they think that you're tied into, but they don't have the full story. So I'm not going to go into everything because I'm an educator and a teacher. So first and foremost, everything I'm doing is for information and to spark the mind, and to get you to think on a bigger picture. And they were asking me, this particular group was asking me about like, why do I say R capital, and like what's the difference between R capital and then the lowercase r, and like why can't a person operate, I guess, essentially outside of the capital aspect in government and achieve the same benefits? And that would have to make me go answering that question fully. Of course, would take too much time here, but I'll say this: that would make me have to go back to the number eight to help you to understand this. When you're dealing with capital, you're dealing with essentially the lock on it is land. In order to access the credit aspect of capital, any capital, you have to prove that you have some type of ownership in the land that the capital is tied in with. Every capital letter is tied in with land. I'm not going to reveal which lands own which letters and all of this and that. And don't get it twisted. The Federal Reserve letters were drawn off of another document that I'm not going to go into right now. So, like for instance, when you see that the letter L is controlled out of the Federal Reserve in San Francisco, I believe it is. When you see that L there, that's there for a reason. And when you go back into older law and start to study how this country got to where it's at now, you'll find out who really controls the letter L, which is another story. I mean, and once you learn this stuff, you can begin to access it from that aspect and get more credit out of it once you learn the truth about it with less effort. So that's why I want to go too deep because I don't want to confuse you guys, because I'm still working this program myself. So essentially, the capital letters are the larger letters. So when you talk about like limited liability companies, this is why they started these limited liability companies, because these companies were, of course, private, and they wanted to learn how to do, not learn, but they wanted to operate privately. They didn't want to tie into the international aspect of law. So then this is where you get the small letters at. And the small letters, see, the thing that they don't teach you is that you're going to be extorted on a different level, really through both of them, honestly. In this government, you're going to be extorted through the use of both of them. It's just how you're going to be extorted is going to be different. Of course, with capital letters, a corporation can't access any credit with capital letters. So even unless you're a CEO of a company or a CFO or some form of an executive, you are essentially just a slave to that company or to that capital. So say for instance, you like, well, I want to access R capital. When you work and you see the letter R, so you're up under the letter R as a worker, period. And they're technical with that. That's why I was saying the disagreement with, not really, well, it was a disagreement that, I was going through with the Wachitas at that time was because, of course, the letter W, they have certain ownership over it. And it's like, I'm not working, period. That's why I don't really like using terms like that, because you're working, you putting yourself up under people. Now I'm talking about I'm up under the Catholic Church and this and that just because I'm saying I'm a worker. See what I'm saying? How it is, or I'm an employee, and they will tax you according to what you say. So you got the limited liability aspect, which is the small letters. This is where you get into limited liability companies, but then you have locks on that. This is when you go into the number eight. So, like for instance, they're up under the Secretary of State. When you're dealing with small lettering, the Secretary of State controls a lot of that. And the Secretary of State is up under what? Oath. In the term oath, you see the letter H, which is the number eight. Because of the fact that this is a lock, you have to go through an oath to access smaller letters. And the original oath was an astrologer's oath, believe it or not, because astrologers did everything by hand. and mapping out the electrical maps, which is, going into a form of astrology when you map things. This is going into geographical astrology. So there's different aspects of astrology, but to access the lower letters, and this is where I get my credentials from, I believe from my studies and from my knowledge and from my working this thing on an operative level, you have to come through an astrologer or some doctor or some form of a person, whether regardless to what they're under oath or not. That really is past the point. It's about the experience. And I'm not saying to go to someone that's under oath. I'm just saying that a person that's under oath doesn't mean that just because they're under oath doesn't mean that they're able to operate and to demonstrate the aspect or the oath that they took, or the essentially the information within the oath. So when you talk about limited liability companies, I'm going to give you an example in smaller letters. Most people going through the secretary of what, their state. That's where they go wrong at, because when you start dealing with international law, there's a way to set up these limited liability companies with smaller letters. There's a way to set these things up going outside of the government or the state. Not really the government, but the Secretary of State. Because remember, the Secretary of State is up under what? Oath. This is what we're talking about here. So if the Secretary of State is up under oath, meaning that you're going to have to go through their state and that state's criteria to do certain deals, and that means you're not going to be able to have access to a certain market unless you learn how to set up LLCs on your own. And that's what I'm talking about here now. So setting up LLCs on your own is essentially a form of doing paperwork online and on it by hand as well as by foot, and being able to claim 100% ownership and proof over everything that you do if you want to properly demonstrate and get out of things by hand and working rituals. And not just rituals, but working with the smaller letters versus the larger letters, because people are aware that the name in all caps puts you into a form of you're dead, basically, period. So if you don't know how to operate in the dead world, you gone. So you can't do nothing with art capital and all this. So you got to know how to operate in the dead world. So you got another group of people that control the lowercase letters, though. And if you don't know how to operate in that world, in the operative world, this is where I get into the 720 at. This is why I teach. And as we go deeper into different letters, I'll go into that. This is why I teach the 720. But really, to fully understand lowercase letters, and I'm gonna shut down here because I can't go any further, because you would have to go into the number 24, believe it or not. To fully understand lowercase lettering and LLCs, you have to have a full knowledge of the number 24 as well as credit and how credit works, going back into the number 3, but also going into the number 30. So I'm going to come back up with this subject. I just wanted to kind of put this out because of the fact that you have people doing things and operating businesses and buildings and claiming that they're independent and doing all of this, and they got all of this money, and it's like, it's people out here that could flip you while you in that building, literally, like not physically, but flip you like you was just a house or a piece of property, and sell you and overnight, and by that morning the bank could own you, or some other lodge or some group could own you. So what I'm getting at here is that if you want to be truly independent, it's not about how strong you are, how tough you are, what you can do. What type of independence do you have? What do you own? What can you prove that you own? And not only that, who are you tied in and connected with? See, these are the things and the questions that, we're going to get into as we talk about doing things on a smaller level or a limited liability level versus and on a, private level inside of buildings, for instance, and real estate. You do businesses in buildings is one law. There's a small limited liability law dealing with LLCs, and then you go outside, you can easily tie into large law. So that's why you see me in different arenas when I'm doing different videos, demonstrating different aspects. So I'll come back up with more, as always. Thank you for all the support. Yesterday we did some live fundraising. Thank you for the support. Helped us to get out of a deep hole that we in, because they hitting me, man. Like, I got to put up more videos, honestly, because people want more information, and I'm so busy coming up with proof and trying to, come up with ownership and this and that. I don't have as much time as I used to drop these videos. So bear with me as I get into trying to update a lot of this information and put this information out on my own, on our community resources versus tapping into these banks online, and they want to flip with you. They want to give you credit you 1 minute, the next minute they mad because they don't understand that I understand how to move on the sovereign realm, and I understand legalese and things of that nature. So they lose money to me, man. I bet everybody essentially. So I get more into that betting. I've talked about that on other videos. So you guys have a good day. I'm gonna go ahead and shut down. As always, stay vigilant. Namaste. Hotep. Wadu. Good vibes.